Here with Greg Hamilton. Greg won the Lyndhurst YBC. He also tied with Jim Marifiotti on the SAHPA points. The interesting part that Greg actually got points in 10 of the 12 Assoc races. Greg, can you tell us the details of your Lyndhurst winner?
The breeding details on the sire, he's Van Loon Jansen. The sire was one of my good Van Loon cocks, and the mother's a Jansen hen.
Right. How did you become interested in pigeon racing, Greg?
Oh, it goes back a long way, Phil. It's probably when I was going through primary school, it was a bit of a craze with a lot of the people at that time. Not so much racing pigeons, but pigeons. And that sort of led and progressed to racing pigeons, which developed into a real passion.
Right.
So yeah, pretty much from primary school.
What were the origins of the stock birds that you keep, Greg?
Well, I think different bloodlines, it's a good thing to have different lines in your loft because it allows you to compete at different levels and at different stages of racing. And short distance racing and middle distance racing, long distance and extreme long distance. I think more often than not you need a different pigeon for each of those tasks. So the bloodlines in my loft are made up of different families. Obviously the Jansen blood, which is probably the most recognised bloodline in the world. The Van Loons are terrific pigeons in my loft. The Herriman Custis pigeons, which are a new addition to my loft, they're well known for being, you know, your short to middle distance type pigeons. And when you go to the long distance, you know, I like again my Van Loons, and I also like my Fryer Gudger lines, and particularly for the extreme long distance, the Fryer Gudger pigeons and the old South Australian based pigeons do it better than anything else. But through the middle distance, I think, you know, the Jansen Van Loon type pigeon, the European pigeon, is superior. They back up with results. They won't give you one result. They'll keep hitting the result sheet, you know, every time you send them, and that's what's just so great about them. So the origin of my pigeons is based on quite a few different family lines, and I think, as I said earlier, that's what you need to have if you want to be competitive at all stages of pigeon racing.
How many young birds would you breed for the coming race season, Greg?
Well, I breed quite a few young pigeons, but a lot of those birds are sold, you know, commercially because of my stud operation. But in relation to the number of young birds that, you know, I'd start racing with, association racing, there are possibly 80 pigeons, 80 young pigeons, you know, and then there'd be some old pigeons as well, which boost the numbers up a little bit. But by the time we get to the first Assoc race, I like to have the numbers at around about 80, because I know that that's the number in my loft that I can get the best out of the pigeons. Anything more than that, you get an overcrowding situation where you never ever get top form in your pigeons. The pigeons, you know, aren't happy. They're not in an environment that's conducive to bringing on super form, you know, with the amount of oxygen that you need around your pigeons and so on. So yeah, about 80.
Start training your pigeons, what would the distance of the first toss be?
Generally I'll start training 5-6 weeks before the first race. The distance of the first toss will only be 8 kilometres, 8 or 10 kilometres. It's Wards Road, which is out Virginia way. And I'll take the young pigeons there every day for 5 or 6 days until they do what I want to see them do. And what I want to see them do is form good habits. And the good habits are getting out of the baskets or the training unit and going straight for home. And I'll keep taking them there until they do that. And when they do that, I'll keep taking them there until it's absolutely drilled into them. Because to me, that's crucial that your pigeons form that habit, because once they've got it, they'll keep it for the rest of their racing life. If they form a bad habit at that age, they'll also keep that for the rest of their racing life, which will make them, you know, not a good racing pigeon. So yeah, probably 5 or 6 weeks before the first race, and to 10 kilometres. When they do everything right at that distance, then I'll move them on to probably 25 or 30 kilometres. Same thing, they'll get 5 or 6 days straight where they show me what I want to see in the pigeons, and then I'll move them on again. Because I think the absolutely crucial thing in pigeon racing, a lot of pigeon races are won or lost at the release. If you've got pigeons that can leave the release straight away, that's time that the other pigeons never ever make up on those birds. So that's what I like to see in the pigeons early on.
Is any single up training?
Single up, no, not really, Phil. What I'll do with the pigeons as the season goes on is make the training, or the size of the group smaller. But not single up training, no. But I'm a firm believer that if you let out 100 pigeons, you've probably got 4 or 5 leaders, and a lot of the other pigeons find it easy just to sit in and follow and not think about the situation. But if you break them into smaller numbers, you're forcing more leaders, more pigeons to think it through. So you can cultivate a better lot of pigeons by doing that, rather than. You don't want pigeons to sit in behind others and just get lazy. You need to break them off, and they need to be able to do their own thing and develop their own talents.
By yourself, or do you go with a couple of friends when you go tossing, Greg?
Early on, I think it's really important to train on your own. To have your pigeons think it through for themselves and develop those habits that you like to see, which they'll have for the rest of their life. Once they've established those good habits of, leaving the toss point or the race point straight away, direct line for home, well, then you can join in and toss with other guys. That's not a problem. But I avoid it at the start of the season because I like my pigeons to do their own thing and fly in a straight line to their own life.
Do you separate your cocks and your hens?
Yes, I do. Before the Young Bird Championship, that's around about the time of the year that I'll decide to break the cocks away from the hens, because they're starting to get the cockbirds are getting boisterous at that stage, and you might get a few warm days where all they want to do is just chase their hens around, and that puts the hens off their game, and your pigeons can lose their focus. So I will move the cocks away and have them in a separate compartment. They can still see the hens, and my loft is set up in a way that I can have that as a roundabout type arrangement where those cocks can move into the other area and the hens can go into the cockbird section where the boxes are, and that excites them, and then I'll move them back around and the cock's back in there, and then they're excited, and you can keep your pigeons motivated and happy that way without your hens getting eggy, or your cock's just totally obsessed with driving a hen. I don't let it get to that point, and that way my pigeons keep their mind on the job, and I can have them racing honestly for longer through the season.
How much importance do you put on loft position, Greg?
Well, loft position, on a certain day it can mean everything. If you're living on the wrong side of the wind on the day, you're probably not going to feature in the results. But my view to all that is you just learn to accept where you live and you get on with it. You can't be making excuses. You've got to go out and get the best out of your pigeons. You've got to get good pigeons and get the best out of your pigeons, and whether you live in a good spot or what's perceived as a bad spot, you just get on with it. And there's no doubt that there's a drag. There's such a thing called drag, where a lot of the flyers are concentrated. If that's where most of the birds are entered from, well, that's where the batch of pigeons is going to hit Adelaide. But and quite often on a day where it doesn't suit you, you'll know that you've had the best pigeon in the race. But that's pigeon racing. You accept it and you just get on with it. Do you think the wind influences the results on racing? Oh, yeah, without doubt, Phil. A strong wind. I mean, a pigeon is only so big and only weighs so much. And if you've got a strong wind, it's obviously going to push them one way or the other. So, if you're living on the right side of that wind, if your loft position is where the wind's blowing the pigeons, of course you're going to feature in the result sheet. And the guy on the wrong side of the wind is more than likely not going to. So yeah, it does influence pigeon racing without a doubt.
Yeah. I think a retired person has advantage over someone that works full time?
Oh yeah, I think so. So pigeons, for me, it's about the bond that you form with your pigeons. And if you can spend more time with your pigeons, obviously you're going to form a greater bond. So it is an advantage, you know. Maybe it's not how much time you got, but how you use it with your pigeons. Yeah. And but certainly a retired person or someone that's full time with their pigeons has got more time to devote to their pigeons. You know, it's as simple as that. So yeah, it's an advantage.
Yeah. Greg, do you like racing latebreds? And if you do, is there anything different you would do with them?
Yeah, I do like latebred pigeons. You do have to treat them differently at the start of the season because they're more fragile at that point. So I find that you know, you need to make allowances and understand that they're only babies, and nurse them along a little bit early, and then once they stick, they really stick with you, and you know, you get to YBC stage, you know, your association races. They're quite often the pigeons that you'll start to clock at that point, you know. So yeah, I do like racing latebreds, and you do have to treat them a little bit differently until you get them to a certain level, and then you can pretty much do anything with them once they're fit.
Greg, could you explain to us why you had multiple clock birds in some of the harder races?
Yeah, I guess the answer to that is, you know, when your pigeons are in form, when you've got form on your loft, quite often you'll land multiple pigeons together. And it just stands to reason, or if you've got, you know, a full team of 30 at the race, the chances of landing more pigeons together are even greater again than if you're sending 12 or 15. Yeah. So, yeah, that's the reason for it. It's a great thing when you're landing multiple pigeons because you know your pigeons are in form. And, you know, you're not just having that fluke pigeon and then a gap between that and your next one. You know, I love seeing pigeons come together, and I love seeing pigeons, you know, come soon after that and more again because you know the pigeons are right on.
Yeah. Greg, do you increase the carbohydrate ration as the races get longer?
No, not the carbo. What I do is increase the amount of protein as the races get longer. Early on I like to have a lot of carbohydrate in my race mix, you know, with maize and the like. But as the racing gets harder and longer, I'll be more inclined to increase the amount of small oily seeds, the fatty seeds, and bring the level of peas and protein up. Right. Because, you know, that's what drives muscle. Protein drives muscle. Yeah. And I have tried the other way. I have tried using higher carb at the long distance. Yeah. But for me, it's more about the protein. That works better for the long distance, and the fatty oily seeds, the fuel that burdens for longer, which you need at the extreme distance. Yeah. That's the way I deal with it. Yeah.
Do you think you would do different in the longer races, Greg, like feeding or training?
Yeah, Phil. Yeah, that all changes. Early racing, I have a lot more barley in my mix.
Right.
On Sundays and Mondays, I'll probably have 50% barley added to my race mix. And as the racing gets longer and harder, that barley's taken out. They don't get as much of it. And also the peas increase and the fatty oily seeds increase. Yeah.
Do you medicate during the race season? And if so, what do you use?
Oh yes. Certainly I've got a medication program. And I think that's really, really important. Yeah. Because the nature of pigeon racing is that you can have a healthy pigeon and it goes to the race, and because it's in contact with a lot of other pigeons, it can quite often come home sick or fall sick. Yeah. So you need to protect against that, and I have a health program or a medication program in place that sees treatment for trichomoniasis, your wet canker, 1 week. The next week I'll treat for respiratory, and the next week I'll treat for coccidiosis. If you can keep those three things under control, you know, you've got a good chance of keeping the form in your pigeons. Yeah. So yeah, I have got a medication program, and I consider it to be very important, you know, to keep that form in the pigeons.
Do you use any natural remedies like apple cider vinegar or garlic with your birds, Greg?
Yes, absolutely. I'm a big believer in natural health stimulants. You know, for me it's all about keeping my pigeons' level of well-being high. Once you do that and you establish that level of well-being, your pigeons are better equipped to handle challenges, you know, of stresses and overlapping stresses that they encounter through a race season, or, you know, a breeding season for that matter, with your breeding birds. So I'm a big user or a big believer in natural health stimulants. Anything to help the pigeon along naturally, you know, gets a tick from me.
Do you worm your pigeons prior to or during the race season, Greg?
Yes, yeah, the pigeons are wormed. My program is such that I treat for external parasites and internal parasites. You need to rid your pigeons of any of those things if you're, you know, serious about having the pigeon perform at its absolute highest level. So yes, I do worm my pigeons.
How would you describe a fit pigeon?
Yeah, there's no mistake in a fit pigeon. You know, you look at the pigeon, you can see that it's well. It's generally soft and silky in the feather, bright in the eye. When they're really, really fit, you know, they'll quiver a little bit as well. When you see it, you know you've got it. Particularly, it's a lot easier with a cockbird. A cockbird will bounce around, he's moving around the loft and he's just full of beans, you know, he's like a rubber ball. He gives himself up. But with a hen they can be a bit different. Some of the really super fit hens I've had will get either a bit mopey on you, they'll just sit there and, you know, they'll just mind their own business and not give themselves away. But the appearance of the pigeon, and you know yourself what sort of work it's had as well. And its health, its level of health, and when all that comes together, you can identify a fit pigeon.
What's your favourite distance racing pigeons, Greg?
I feel I like all distances. You know, if there's a race on the program, you like to think that you can be competitive, you know, in that race, whether it's, you know, 300 kilometres, 600 kilometres or 1300 kilometres. But I guess, you know, there's nothing like the enjoyment you get from watching a long distance pigeon arrive home after 20 hours. You know, you get a bit of a tingle, bit of a chill. And, you know, Alice Springs pigeons still make you shake after you clock them. You know, your hands will shake because you're just in admiration of the pigeon. It's brilliant.
What lines of flight do you prefer racing, Greg?
There's no real preference, Phil. I mean, you know, for me, I think you do need a different pigeon for your south-east line and east line. You know, traditionally your old South Australian-based families do it better than others. Although, having said that, I've found in recent years my Van Loons and Jansons are showing that they can do that job on that line over the hills on the east or south-east, north-east, equally as well as what they do on the other line. But you know, no, I've got no real preference for a line of flight. You know, if there's a race south-east or east or north, you know, it's a race there that you to compete in, and you know, you do your best at it.
Where do you see the sport in, say, 10 years' time, Greg?
Well, that'll really be determined by what approach the management committees of the federations and associations around Australia decide on. You know, I think the way we see things at the moment, pigeon racing is at the crossroads. Because you look around and you see a lot of guys that are older, you know, and you say to yourself, okay, in 10 years' time, are they going to be flying pigeons? Well, the answer to that is no. You know, 80% of them probably won't be. So we've got an ageing population in our ranks. So at the moment, I see in 10 years' time, pigeon racing will be made up of a lot less pigeon flyers. There'll be a greater focus on one-off races because they'll allow guys to have the enjoyment of pigeon racing without having to take on a full responsibility in their backyard. You know, they can be involved in syndicates or whatever. the lifestyle of people these days is such that a lot of houses they're building, you know, there's no backyards left on the block. There's no room for pigeon lofts. And in a lot of councils, you know, it's difficult to have that happen anyway. So yeah, the future of pigeon racing, you know, I'm not saying it's a negative picture, but it'll be a lot different to what we see today, and today's a lot different to what it was 10 years ago. So, you know, things change. But, you know, marketing, putting pigeon racing out to mainstream public will be important in the years to come if we think we can attract new membership, and you know, that's the way you do it. You put it in mainstream public and promote it for all the great things it is, because the joy and elation that you get from watching pigeons, your pigeons come home, is the essence of pigeon racing. So it depends on how it's put to the public.